All right, I've got a great guest for you today, somebody that is beyond qualified to help us understand what's going on in the United States, what's going on with the FBI, the CIA, the attacks on former President Donald Trump, and much, much more. Michael Waller, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
It's great to be here.
So, let me give some background just so people know who you are. You are the president of Georgetown Research. You're a senior analyst for strategy at the Center for Security Policy. You're a former CIA asset. You've been published in the New York Post, the Washington Examiner, the Federalist, and the Wall Street Journal. I want to jump right in on a question that I think my audience wants to understand. They want to understand, is the deep state, or if nothing else, the radical left faction of the Democrat Party, still coming after Donald Trump? I see every day in the news AG Letitia James trying to get Trump for $450 million on a crime that nobody says happened, including the banks. I see Alvin Bragg's coming after Trump for a tax issue, but really it's to smear an alleged affair with a former porn star. I see Jack Smith and Merrick Garland under the direction of Joe Biden coming after Trump for leading an insurrection against the government. I see Biden being given less than a slap on the hand for stealing top secret documents as a senator and as a vice president, while Biden's DOJ is trying to put Trump in jail until he dies. What the heck is going on with the deep state and the radical left?
What we see is a weaponization of our entire government for the purposes of essentially building a one-party state or a one-party state with a compliant opposition Republican Party that goes along with what they want. We've seen this happen with banana republics. We've seen it happen with some of the so-called emerging democracies in the post-Soviet space, and this is what we have here at home. And it's finally manifested itself to the point where no one can argue with it. I mean, even think Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer warned Trump in 2017 that if you go after this security and intelligence apparatus, they have 6 ways from Sunday from getting you. Well, Schumer was right. I mean, he wasn't warning Trump to be a friend. He was just saying that none of us dare to challenge this thing. So people like Schumer go along to get along. People like Biden, let's not pretend that Biden's actually controlling things at the White House. Somebody else is doing it, using him as the, you know, apparently elected mouthpiece. So you have an unaccountable intelligence and security apparatus that was created to protect us from such abuses, to defend our constitutional rights, to be apolitical, to be fair, to have standard rules of truth and evidence and so forth. And that's all gone.
Wow, dang. Um, is there any coming back from this? I know Vivek Ramaswamy, uh, Ron DeSantis, Trump, they talk about taking out the deep state, but have they dug in too deep? Is their focus so shifted that they see all of us as the enemy versus the person to defend?
What has happened over the years is that, and you get this in any bureaucracy, where the nature of the bureaucrats, they go in, most of them go in with a mission in mind or with just a good career in mind, but they end up being contemptuous of the average American. They think they know better. This all comes from the New Deal administrative state of progressive specialists, and the specialists know better than everybody else. Well, imagine we've had, what, 90 years of this. And over that 90 years, how many generations of public sector professionals have there been? So they've embedded themselves to the point where they know what's best for the rest of us. And if we oppose them on it, we're bad people. And we're really a threat to the rest of the country. So they don't view their role anymore as a constitutional role of the governed giving their consent to be governed. They view it as the opposite. They view themselves as the elites whose job is to govern the rest of us. And when you get to a situation like that, you have a deep administrative state that uses all the levers of power against anyone who would try to change that. And it's become even more entrenched than ever because you have a huge contracting apparatus around it where officials work their careers, they put in their 30 to 40 years, and then they collect retirement, and then they double dip by going back in as contractors. So they're making four, five, $600,000 a year or more, especially if they own the contracting company. They're making millions of dollars a year, and they've planned this for their whole career. So when you talk about paring back the deep state and draining the swamp, you're talking about stripping the livelihoods off these thousands and thousands of careerists whose entire business model is to take more taxpayer money and expand their power.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. Oh, that's why I love having good guests on. Wow. Okay, I've got to like process and digest what you said. I've been
Well, I mean,
reading a lot.
think of it though, that 9 of the 20 wealthiest counties in the United States are in the Washington, D.C. area. Yet DC has no indigenous industry that's not tied to the central government. Everything is part of the central government. So half the counties in the country almost are soaking the taxpayer. You can't touch that. They will get you.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. Okay, this is good stuff. But I've got to process this, Michael. In the meantime, I've been reading every single day about illegal immigrant gangs flooding into the United States, specifically gangs from Mexico, Venezuela. One ringleader from Venezuela was arrested for robbery at gunpoint in New York City. He told the authorities that the number of criminals that have come into the country is bigger than any of us would guess. Do you think there's any truth to that story, or is that just him posturing and being threatening?
Oh, it's absolutely true. A generation ago, 2 generations ago, Fidel Castro emptied his prisons in the Mariel boat lift, sent all the convicts in Cuba to Florida. More recently, the Venezuelan regime that's allied with Cuba uh, emptied all their prisons to send them up here as first asylees and then refugees and now migrants. They have these regimes have weaponized illegal immigration to empty their prisons, solving their own problems, and then to flood our country with hardened convicts. Some
Wow.
African countries are starting to do this now.
And doesn't it
And once they're
cost?
here, we can't deport them back, even if we wanted to, because the countries have to agree to take them back. But these regimes won't take back their ex-cons.
Yeah, I just read that Venezuela is like tough, deal with it. We're not taking a single person back.
Yeah.
Wow. And doesn't it cost the American taxpayer anywhere from 100,000 to $250,000 per prisoner in order to keep them in a jail cell?
Yeah, I don't know the figures, but I would guess it would be about in that range.
Yeah. So they're just dumping all their problems on us.
Yeah, and it's not just the prison conditions for them either. It's their health care. They get free lawyers that we're paying for. Some of them will even get their dependents who are with them to be taken care of as well. So it's a colossal cost for every single taxpayer. We're wasting our money. Think of it as we're doing our taxes this time of year. Think of how much of that money is simply wasted on this kind of stuff. You might as well just burn your cash. How many days and weeks per year is every citizen working just to pay taxes to fund this stuff?
Yeah, I look at all the money going off to foreign wars, military bases, giveaways to other countries to obey the United States, free weapons, free health care, $500,000 to take care of all the illegal migrant. I mean, it makes me crazy. It makes me not want to pay my taxes. And yet, as an intelligent person, I'm like, I know there has to be taxes. No one's going to volunteer to give money for a bridge or for a school or for fixing a road. So there has to be some of that. But the abuse of the American taxpayer, my eyes have been opened, and it just makes me want to throw up. It's so disgusting.
Yeah. Oh, and there's a whole industry around it and a whole lobby around it. So you've got the legal industry, the charitable industry. These are industries. Just because they're nonprofits doesn't mean their executives don't get paid a ton of money, and family members. I mean, you've got a group in Silver Spring, the HIAC. It's an abbreviation. They're getting tens of millions of dollars every year that Congress provides to run illegal immigrant camps in Panama as magnets. So you have people flying from Mali and Mauritania, North Africa, to Turkey, direct flights from Turkey to Panama City for them to go to these camps where the American taxpayer is funding them as a magnet, and then that processes them to come up illegally into Texas.
Yeah, this Texas border crisis, I'm so glad it finally started getting attention, but I don't know that it's getting any kind of solution. So we need attention first, then we need a solution. But the Biden administration doesn't seem to want to provide any kind of solution, and that all seems very purposeful to me.
Yeah, it is purposeful. The president has extraordinary powers to control illegal immigration and to designate individuals for deportation. Doesn't need the permission of Congress to do it. The laws already exist. And it's one of the most extraordinary powers that a president has to do just by fiat.
Wow. This is really big in the news right now, but want to get your take on it. How dangerous is it for New York City to continue to publicly market and advertise and entice and bribe illegal immigrants to come to New York City? You get $1,000 a month, free hotel, 3 free meals, schooling for your children, free health care, and now Eric Adams is handing out $10,000 cash lump sum payments, all approved by Mayor Eric Adams and funded by New York taxpayers. I know truckers are upset about this, and about Trump being hit with these unwarranted fines. But when are the people, the families of New York going to, join forces and fight back? They're literally stealing money from their families and collapsing their system. They're collapsing their city.
Well, first, I don't have any sympathy for the New Yorkers because they voted for this. They voted to make their city a sanctuary city. They voted. It's in the city's constitution. It just can't be. They voted for all of this. They wanted this. Let them pay for it themselves. What shouldn't happen is we shouldn't be paying for it. All the rest of us who are not New Yorkers, and we certainly shouldn't be bearing the cost of any spillover effects from when these illegals finally suck everything out of New York in terms of resources. They go hunting in other states for people to victimize. So on the one hand, I don't have any sympathy for New York, especially New York City area residents who voted for this and went along with it. On the other hand, though, the powers that be want everyone to feel helpless and demoralized and isolated. They want that. So on the one hand, while it's kind of satisfying to see that these people are finally paying for what they voted for, it's very sad too, because of course many of them didn't vote for that. But it's also sad to see, this is our country. It's not just their city. This is happening to all of us. So then that means we have to work with these guys and let the New York people who are up in arms about this know that they're not alone, and we have to set aside whatever, say, political or other differences we have, and say we all have to work together to get these illegals out, and to get the politicians out who want them there. You see the same problem in Massachusetts and other big East Coast cities and states with big cities, where they're not blaming Biden for this. They're demanding more federal aid to deal with the problem, and then they're getting taxpayer subsidized charitable organizations to fund more and more of this, but they're pushing the middle class and the poorer people aside in favor of these illegal aliens. So for example, you don't have in the Boston area where they're happy to bring them all in, but don't bring them to Martha's Vineyard because that's wealthy white people. Don't bring them to wealthy white liberal towns around Boston, put them in the middle class and poor areas like Chelsea and Dedham and Everett and other places like that, because, well, that's where these types of people belong. So you see this very elitist attitude that the governing authorities have in Massachusetts and other East Coast places to resettle these illegals in areas where the people are just where the American citizens are just working hard to make ends meet on their own, and they see themselves being displaced.
Yeah, I know. My audience is an older audience. Typically, about 70% of my viewers are over the age of 45, and many of them are on Social Security, and they're seeing these illegal immigrants get significantly more benefits out of America than they did after working an entire 40-year plus career full time in order to get those benefits. It just like it just feels so insulting to me. And it's not even me. I'm still working. I just can't imagine working my whole life and then feeling like somebody else gets better care from my country than I do.
And you can't go into an emergency room in many places without waiting in a very, very long line, or even go to a pharmacy because you have these illegals coming in. And if not getting priority, at least flooding the place and overburdening the doctors and staff so that you don't have the medical care that you need, even if you want to pay cash for it.
Yeah. Someone who's just grabbing headlines like crazy right now is Tucker Carlson. He is a big fan of yours. He recommends you to people. He said, "You are the best at exposing the dark, anti human politics of academia and the unfettered power of the national security state." Specifically, what is Tucker Carlson talking about when he says dark, anti human politics of academia? What does that mean?
Harvard really did us a favor when the Harvard president said genocide is relative.
Oh my God.
Mass murder is okay as long as the right people are doing it. That's basically what she said. And then dig down a little further, and you find the president of arguably the most prestigious university in the United States is a serial plagiarist. And that's okay with Harvard. Dig down further, and you see lots of plagiarism among the Harvard administrative staff and the academic leadership. And you're thinking, this is not some third rate for profit online university. This is Harvard. But not only that, you have this extremism, this ideological extremism at Harvard that sort of literally takes the 1619 narrative that America is a repressive country. It was built by white oppressors, by white supremacists who have no redeeming values. The founding principles of our country have no redeeming values. They just create a good matrix from which radicals can take over the machinery of an administrative state. But that's the only value it has. Where the Constitution itself is relative, just like genocide. Our Constitution is relative. It's a living document that can mean whatever people want it to mean. And diversity, equity, and inclusion rules. If you do not go along with diversity, equity, and inclusion, you become an unperson. So imagine with universities like that, with its premier international relations program, premier in the sense of prestige, not premier in the sense of quality. It used to be great quality, even though it was liberal. It was quality and it had integrity. These people are training our intelligence officers, future intelligence officers. They're providing academic studies for current intelligence officers, for FBI agents and analysts, for our diplomats, all to indoctrinate them and to reinforce the idea that we are a bad country, that we are not, America is not an exceptional country, that we have to atone for all the crimes of anyone who lived before us, and that really our culture is fundamentally flawed and should be effectively destroyed and replaced by diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, that is a critical theory. That's a Marxist construct. That was created by Karl Marx, by Lenin, by the Soviets, and implanted here in American academia to expose generations of American students who become our diplomats and our Justice Department lawyers and all these other people to run our country. So it should be no surprise then when Tucker comments on the darkness of academia, he's also looking at how the darkness of academia transfers into the instruments of government power, where the people inside government power have been educated or miseducated in these systems. And so Tucker's referring to that whole process of how do we get to where we are, where we have an apparatus that's like any third world banana republic secret police, but on a much more sophisticated scale.
Okay, that perfectly clarified what I was asking. Thank you for that. You've got a book out, Big Intel, how the CIA and FBI went from Cold War heroes to deep state villains. Why did you write this book, Michael? What would my audience learn from reading it?
Well, having been an observer, so for me, I came into this as a kid. In high school, I had been involved in the anti-nuclear movement, and I realized I was a dupe. I was in it just because I wanted to protect the environment. I didn't understand. I was 15 years old. And then when I realized that I was being trained by communists, and I was aware of this because I grew up with, Vietnam War news all the time, and I knew something that, wait, this is wrong. And then the people training me had supported the Viet Cong and Hanoi and Mao Zedong and the Soviets, and I'm thinking, whoa. So as I realized I'm a dupe, I better get out of this. I'm going to expose this. So I thought I'll spend the rest of my life doing this. So anyway, in college, I got involved. This is now 1980. I'm a freshman. Ronald Reagan's elected my freshman year. I'm a student in Washington, D.C., and an intern in the U.S. Senate. And then I started networking with people saying, how can I get involved in taking down Soviet communism, protecting our country from the subversion in here? And then so that allowed me to network with people to realize we have been so penetrated by our enemies that we don't even realize it because it's part of our intellectual DNA now from public schools and a lot of private schools onward. I went to public schools and looking back on it, you can see where they were really trying to indoctrinate, especially in high school. So, and it's only gotten worse now because it starts in kindergarten. Anyway, that's how I first got involved with this, and I became an asset for the CIA and CIA Director Bill Casey in Central America during this time because the CIA could not produce intelligence that the Soviets were behind international terrorism. So journalists could find it, judges in Europe could find it, courts could do it, academics could do it, but somehow the CIA couldn't. So Reagan's CIA director, Bill Casey, had his own private networks of people going around the world to uncover this information on their own as sort of a team B approach. He said to the CIA people, find what you can, draw the conclusions that you can, and found that they could not find or draw conclusions from information that people without access to secret intelligence could find it on their own. How do you explain this? So that's where I got involved in there, and then that took me on a lifetime journey. But I found even back then in the early 80s, the CIA had an institutional bias that blinded them, no enemies on the left type of institutional bias. And it's only gotten worse now. Because at least the people back then, and there were a lot of really good analysts there and really great intelligence officers there, but it wasn't the bureaucratic norm. Well, now you have it where you've got DEI has been immersed so deeply into our whole intelligence community where you can't get promotions anymore to any significant degree if you don't go along with the whole DEI agenda, the whole woke agenda, the whole critical theory, cultural Marxist agenda, which they don't call cultural Marxist, but that has now permeated the entire nerve center of our intelligence community.
That's terrifying. It's like they've boiled the American frog just slowly enough that we don't realize that they have shaped a narrative in our mind, that they have poisoned us to each other and good values, and they've hijacked the schools that then send teachers out that then hijack our children. And it's like Marxism and communism have just slowly infiltrated to the point where we don't even realize that we've got this mind virus of thinking because it's been so slow But this is why I bring people like you on. We got to wake up. We got to wake up and take back this country. We've got to have our eyes open that we are daily being shaped by a narrative that is not true, that is not good, that is not helpful. I'm excited for people to read this. The book has such incredible reviews online. People that I have a lot of respect for have said, this is a great book. You've got to read it. So I really appreciate you coming on. If people, I'm going to put a link so that people can get to the book just directly. But if people want to follow you online, Mike, what's the best way to do that?
I'm on Twitter at J. Michael Waller. And then my organization, the Center for Security Policy, is securefreedom.org.
Okay. I'll make sure to put both of those down below. We could go on and on. This would be fun to keep going, but I know we're constrained for time. So I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate all that you do for our country and for writing this book. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.